Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 12 of Viva Broadcasts. All three directors are joined by J.D. Shaw, Andrew Hitz, and Lance LaDuke, former members of the Boston Brass, to chat about their views on the current musical climate, both as educators and performers. There's also a healthy amount of debauchery and lighthearted jabs, mainly at the expense of Buddy. We had a blast with this one, and we hope you enjoy hearing some of the stories from these guys.
Hello, everyone. This is episode 12 of the Viva Broadcasts, our month-long webinar series provided by Viva Brass Institutes of Virginia, which is the Fredericksburg Brass Institute and the Tidewater Brass Institute. This is a very, very exciting episode because we have no idea what kind of trouble is going to happen with our guests and our directors. So our directors joining the call, Mr. Dakota Corbliss, Director of Operations.
Hello.
Our Director of Development, Sam Ambrose. And then we have gentlemen that could be called many things. For lack of a better word, I guess we'll say friends, but also Viva artist alumni, all people that have been artists at the Brass Institutes of Virginia, as well as alumnus of Boston Brass. So we have Mr. Andrew Hitz, Mr. J.D. Shaw, doing business as Lance's Janky Lip, and Lance LaDuke, who's doing business as Sigourney McJackal.
Wait, give me a second. I'm updating my bio to include this appearance. I'll be right with you.
Yes, sure thing.
How do you
Let me know if
VivaCast?
Viva Broadcasts.
Tomato, potato.
Euphonium, baritone. Anyway, so if you
ukulele,
have
they're all the same.
Comments or questions for today's episode, please make sure that you are commenting them below on the Fredericksburg Brass or Tidewater Brass Facebook page.
I have lots of comments already. Oh, you mean the people watching?
We do mean the people watching. But if you have comments as well, then you could talk about them.
We'll talk later. That's fine.
That's why you're on here.
We can tighten up the intro a little bit. That's fine.
Okay, thanks. I'll take your notes. You can send it to the trash can. So we are here today.
Burn.
Gotcha.
Hanging out with brass players, comedians, troublemakers, and jokesters. But we're super thrilled to have all of you guys here, not just because of how entertaining this episode will be, but all of you have been massive supporters of the Brass Institutes of Virginia from the very beginning. So thank you guys for coming on, and we're looking forward to what you have to say. Looking forward and terrified to what you have to say today.
I never returned that waiver, just for the record.
Oh, God.
We know.
It's a risk we're willing to take.
Waiver?
So you guys are super creative people, and I know that this quarantine has affected everybody, but you've managed to keep busy and clearly in good spirits. So we can maybe start with Andrew, but what kind of the stuff have you been up to so far?
Well, what have I been up to? A lot of things that I'm normally up to, I have not been up to at all. And then some new stuff. I've been trying to be patient with myself because, especially at the beginning of quarantine, there were a lot of people who seemed to be posting like every single day of like new things, and here's another arrangement of me playing 12 different tuba parts. The first question is why, but then and it sounds amazing and it's high production, and I was just trying to like not cry every day because the world was burning around me and us. Yeah, I do cry a lot. I'm in touch with my feelings, JD. No thanks to the time I was in the band with you. But it's all right. I've unpacked a lot of that with my therapist. Actually,
Obviously not.
I'm my own therapist. It's working great. So I have not been playing a ton, and I have been playing. I go through phases of playing a bunch and then not at all. There's no gigs. I'm not motivated to make videos, which I think is totally fine. I think that if you are, then awesome. For me personally, I'm not clicking on any of those anymore, like from anybody. I just don't need to hear any of it anymore. And I'm like not trying to. If that's your thing, and I bet somebody listening to this is like clicks on every one of them, which is great. But that's not where my head is at right now. We just had this huge Brass Junkies Academy summer workshop last month, which was awesome with like 15 guest artists. And I've been teaching some lessons. I haven't released a TEM episode in like a month and a half, although that's about to change. We just launched a YouTube channel for the Brass Junkies, and our conversation with Chris Martin was actually the first one that we just videoed, who is best known as Michael Martin's brother. Spend a lot of time with my family. So it's been a weird time, but some of it's been good. I've eaten dinner with both of my wife and son sitting at the table like every day, which is crazy. That usually happens sometimes not less than twice a week. It's been happening 7 days a week, which is good. So that's
Awesome.
all.
Yeah. Sigourney, what have you been up to?
Well, recently I decided to have some salivary glands removed from my lower lip. But prior to that, I did all that stuff Andrew was talking about except eating dinner with his wife and son. And
She keeps disappearing every night at like 8:30, and she says she's going to the store when we're getting everything delivered. It's very confusing.
I think I've been doing a few things. I'm trying to get healthier, so I'm working out with a trainer, which is a good thing because at some point I'm going to have to go back in front of humans again, and I want to be as healthy as possible when I do that. And I'm creeping ever closer to the target age of the Rona, so I want to just sort of have as much armor as possible when that starts. And then I would say that the bulk of the rest of my time has been thinking about, reading about, talking about what happens on the other side of this for artists and musicians in particular, in terms of how you create, enjoy, educate, learn, deliver music in a new environment. And since all of the old paradigms are currently on hold, I'm trying to keep an eye on what is out that is more interesting and that might stick around. I think that there's going to be a big push for things to rubber band back to what it was before. And I personally don't think that's going to be very successful across the board. I think that some organizations and artists will be able to do that. But I think that this challenge provides an opportunity for us to reevaluate the ways in which we do all of that stuff related to music. And what does it mean to be a musician? And what does it mean to play music for an audience? And what does it mean to deliver this art form? What's the role of music and a musician now? So I've had a bunch of meetings with students and colleagues, and we're working on a new course at CMU for this fall. I had a call earlier today that we're designing, as well as just sort of trying to help all of the students process this while I'm also trying to process it. And on top of that, my stepdaughter graduated from college this year, and my son graduated from high school, so he's gearing up to go to college, whatever that looks like. And it's just all I think about and all I do every day, if I let it. I try not to let it, but it's just sort of all encompassing. And then sometimes I go and have an oral surgeon cut things out of my face.
When time allows.
Well, everybody's got to have hobbies.
Absolutely. And our Beaver bro, Mr. J.D. Shaw.
Yeah, I wish I could say that I'm as forward-looking as Lance on this stuff. I'll tell you, at the beginning of the summer, it was all-encompassing. It was all I could think about, and I just kind of started getting darker and darker about it. And I really needed to kind of unplug from it all. And those of you who know me know that usually I'm kind of a 150 mile an hour go at everything all the time. And I think this whole experience is somebody telling me to, you need to sit down, stop thinking so much, and hit the reset button. And so for me personally, that's kind of what I've had to do, is just disconnect from everything going on in the world a little bit, and just say, hey, what's really going on with me and my family, and really try to try to connect with that. I just finished. I've been doing lots of guest appearances at festivals and things like that. So that's been really fun. It's been fun just for like an hour or two, kind of engage with students and really see the best part of what this whole musical experience is, and that's just engaging with people for a little bit of time. I just finished the Rafael Mendez Brass Institute online, which I was a little concerned going into it, but I thought it turned out great, and it was really neat to see so many students there and engaged. And while it's always such a great hang too with all my colleagues there, we miss that, of course, but we usually sit outside by this fire pit at the hotel every night, so we did that virtually one night, and it was nice. So that was it. But just I've been grilling and smoking a lot of meats and things like that, learning how to do that. I've never been much of a grill person, so I was like, well, let me just work on that, and then just spending a lot of time with my family and hanging out with my kids a lot, playing some new video games, reading a lot, and not reading anything that could be helpful, kind of on purpose. Just reading a lot of science fiction and just trying to disconnect. So I think everybody is going through this with their own personal journey of what to do to deal with it. There's times when I feel guilty that I'm not as productive as I need to be, and that's when I just have to say no, just exist for just a little bit, just kind of look around, and don't pass judgment. Don't try to guilt yourself into going and doing something because you're supposed to. So that's kind of what I've been doing.
I think it's awesome that you said like you're focusing on slowing down a lot, because I think a lot of people who have a multitude of gigs and jobs and side hustles who have to either create income or create what they're doing elsewhere are being forced to slow down whether they like it or not during this time as well. And all three of you have teaching appointments at universities. What's been one of the toughest hurdles that you've had to overcome in terms of trying to teach your students from a distance? Not all at once.
Well, obviously there's the personal connection, face-to-face, being in the same room. But I'll tell you what, there was a lot of my colleagues that were really complaining about it, and I was really impressed with everyone in my studio except for Dakota, because they really they really seem to take.
I didn't practice enough.
Yeah. Anyway, it seemed like everybody took the opportunity to really try to improve some things which they might have not had the distraction-free environment to do. So all in all, I was really proud of my students and watched them get better. They were uploading videos every single week, and I think rather than trying to do a live synchronous lesson, they were uploading videos. And I think because they spent so much time on the videos and they had that hard copy thing kind of staring them in the face, they were really achieving a lot more rather than coming into the lesson kind of hacking through it and just being like, well, I hope it goes well. Here they had to put up a video that they were proud of. And that was something that they felt happy. And talking to some of the students, they were like spending hours and hours and hours trying to put up these good videos. And as a teacher, you sit there and you say, well, you need to record yourself. Please record yourself. And sometimes they do, but here was a requirement every week to do it. And they got better and better and better at it as the semester went along, so that finally when we came to jury time, and lo and behold, they had to upload videos for their juries, they were pretty successful at it. So like I said, other than it's just nice to see somebody face to face and talk to them and see what they're doing on the horn and hear real horn sound, I think all in all there's been blessings as well as problems.
I like that everyone has changed their names. So like when this goes over to like the podcast and it goes over to audio, we have Bell Biv DeBiva here, as well as Biva Dam over here. So Either way, it's good marketing. So we appreciate you guys spreading the Beaver name. Something that I was kind of thinking about is since you all have been artists tonight at either the Fredericksburg Brass Institute or the Tidewater Brass Institute, or in Andrew's case, both.
Oh, yeah.
So, and I really hope there's an answer to this, but what has been maybe one of your favorite experiences from when you were coming to one of the festivals?
Leaving? No, that's not nice.
I love how you said it's not nice, not that it's not true.
Well, I don't want to lie. I mean, everything on Facebook is true, so I don't want to lie on Facebook. So, here, let me handle this one. I think that my favorite thing was that I believe I was the first artist on the first day of the first year, right?
Yep. Yep.
Yeah, I showed up, and and it was kind of like, cool, like, what do we do? But it was, even that first day when you didn't even know what you were doing, it was great. Like, you guys had put so much thought into it. And I've done a lot of things like this, and some that have been happening for years are a hot mess, right? Where they're just like, where the time of the guest artist isn't really maximized in terms of, like, what the actual participants could use. And even when you guys didn't know what you were doing, which, by the way, I'm not trying to be funny, or it's not a criticism. It's like, for the Brass Junkies Academy Summer Workshop last month, we didn't know what we were doing because we'd never done anything like it before, right? There's like and we did a lot right, and there's like a bunch of stuff that we totally would have done differently from like behind the scenes or whatever. But it was good from the beginning, just because you guys you were already players and teachers, even though you were young, and you had all been students at things like that, and you had just put so much thought into it. And each time that I've been back, because I went back to Fredericksburg and then I went to Tidewater again, I was at the first one. So I don't know whether maybe they just know the numbers will be low and they feel like they need to invite me. So maybe that's why I'm exactly. Yeah. Give it to Mikey. He'll eat it. But yeah, it's only gotten better every single time. So, which has been kind of cool to watch everything grow. So, see, I said something nice. That's probably it. That's it for the hour. But I said something nice.
I remember that moment because this was in 2013, the first Fredericksburg Brass Institute. So Sam wasn't there and Dakota wasn't there because we just had 3 faculty, and we
you count Kenneth as faculty.
We had 2 faculty and a warm body. So we had envisioned what we wanted this to look like. We obviously went through a bunch of hurdles, a bunch of things didn't go our way, and then we found a new avenue, and that's what you do with obstacles. But I do remember it's like we did it, they're here, and then just all of a sudden these parents dropped off kids, and we were like,
and I showed up like 5 minutes after that point. Like, they already looked shell shocked. And I was like,
yeah.
Do you want me to do like the thing? And like, and you guys can go and like, I got an hour. You're fine. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. That was exactly what it is. Oh, actually, Kenneth just commented on this. I have a doctorate in just being around. So yeah, we thank you, like, you're not just for believing in the festival and working with us, but really helping kick it off, because like we didn't know what was going to happen. Those kids didn't know, what this festival was going to look like. And then all of a sudden this guy comes in and starts playing some funky tuba lines, and then all was right in the world. So
I'm glad that I fixed everything. That's that's my reputation. Yeah.
And then I think in 2017, that was Lance's year. Lance, that was your first, or Biva Diva's first year.
That is correct.
Did you enjoy anything about being at the Fredericksburg Brass Institute?
I did. Actually, the most memorable thing, though, was not a good memory. The good memories were the hang and meeting a bunch of really cool people. I think that might be where I met Abby. It was either at that or later at the IET, but I think Abby Lannon I remember giving her a master class there. She was crazy nervous, and I couldn't understand why. I was like, I just asked her, "Are you nervous?" She said, "Yeah." "Why?" But anyway, the hang was cool. The kids were cool, and that was the story that was not so cool, and it ended up okay. But we just adopted this dachshund, this miniature dachshund. Her name is Maple. And Maple is upstairs sleeping on the couch because the mailman's not here yet, at which time she will defend the universe from the mailman. But so we had only had her for 2 weeks, I think, and we brought her on this trip, and we were leaving the house party, and she found a frog in the bushes or the landscaping in front of the house, and grabbed it in her mouth, and then she spit it out, and we went to the car, and my wife went to pick her up to put into the car, and she said she's foaming at the mouth. And I was like, ha ha, get in the car. She says she's foaming at the mouth. And sure enough, I'd never seen a dog actually foaming at the mouth until this moment. So I, believe it or not, I'm pretty good under pressure. And so I remembered that we had a little bit of water in this water bottle left, and I soaked some paper napkins and just like crammed my hand in her mouth and like wiped out as much of the foam and the poison as I could. And then we spent the night reading, looking for where there was an animal hospital if we needed to go to it, and then reading about frogs of Virginia, and alternating articles between your dog will be fine or your dog will not make it through the night. And so it was like, I tried to like catch one. I would read a positive one and then try and go to sleep because I knew that the next one I was going to read was going to be terrible. So those are my lasting memories, but we should stay with the first ones.
Yeah. Well, we actually, that's one of the reasons we have this frog eating clause in our contract
which we still haven't received from you.
Yeah.
The Institute is not responsible for damages of the consumption of frogs, but we actually did that in 2014 with Kenneth, but we also found it applicable for when it happened to you.
Speaking of claws, I just have to comment again on how much Dakota looks like the young Kris Kringle from the animated Night Before. Which one was that?
It was
Rankin and Bass.
Yeah. If you could give a visual
Santa Claus
description.
is coming to town.
Yeah, the Santa Claus is coming to
yeah.
town, where he's got this like full red beard. He's still a young, sprightly, no glasses, but otherwise you fit him to a T.
Oh,
Mr.
thank you so
Kringle.
much, Lance.
No.
Speaking of my conscience, JD, do you want to talk about your experience at Fred Brass, otherwise known as Dakota's Conscience?
Well, I remember three things. One was Buddy foaming at the mouth because he was so sick that he was not around much. The second, so there's three things. The second thing was I really enjoyed the masterclass part, where it's actually rare when you can do a masterclass and the entire musical community is there. Usually it's just the horns or just the trumpets, and I thought it was really cool that everybody was there and engaged. And I think too often it's like you could learn something from a trumpet player, not much, or a tuba player, a euphonium, or trombone. And so I just thought the collaboration of that time was cool. And then the third thing, which just really struck out to me, when you're a teacher and you're watching your students progress through and then go on to life, it's really neat when you see some of the values that you are trying to instill in your students really, just being put forth. And so I was really proud of Dakota, just seeing what he put on here, and part of this younger team, which helps me put a lot of faith in this next generation of teachers and brass players and pedagogues, that it's moving forward, and it's moving forward in a really healthy manner. So I was just really proud of all you guys, just seeing what you're doing, going out there and killing it. So that was really, and that's what I went away from the week thinking is just, man, I think brass playing is in good hands.
Wow. Yeah, thank you. That actually makes me think about this last year in 2019 at Tidewater Brass and at Fred Brass, because there was a moment Dakota and I looked at each other in Tidewater Brass, and it was maybe Wednesday or something for the week, and we're like, do you feel fine? It's like, I do. And it's like, it's weird that because we're just used to having this constant stress or anxiety about stuff, and then me getting sick right before Fredericksburg Brass last year, I was able to make it home to drop off the other trumpet faculty because we were just in Miami for ITG, and I just went right to the doctor, and I felt so guilty for Sam and Dakota. It's like, I'm not going to be there. They have to, like, people had registered, there was rehearsals, all this stuff, and I was just like, is everything okay? And they're like, yeah, actually it's like really easy, and it's really great. So just like seeing the transition
It's
of
so much better without you here.
yeah, that's what I was afraid of, is that I'm disposable.
We all are.
I kind of had a question for you guys. Lance, you kind of touched on this in the beginning, but you guys spent a lot of your career doing chamber music, and it kind of seems like it might be the first live route back to what could be live performances. And I was wondering if you guys think this could be not necessarily a revival, but kind of a rejuvenation of that kind of audience that comes to those sorts of concerts, because it'll be a hard time with the University of Colorado study coming out, like when large ensembles are going to be safe to attend and that kind of concert setting and whatnot.
Well, I think brass groups are uniquely positioned to take advantage of the opportunity. It requires that they do so, but there will be a time when, because we are designed to be played in either humongo rooms or outdoors. And so that's kind of built into what we do natively. We don't need amplifiers. We don't need microphones. We don't need proximity. We don't need the audience to be super close to us. And we actually don't need to be super close to one another. I've told this story a couple of times, but when Sam Palafian coached us, he would frequently have us go to as far away from each other in a room as possible and face away from one another, and then play and try and enter on some sort of touchy piece together, as it requires you to listen in a way that you don't normally do. So these are all inherent advantages for brass players to lead the charge in terms of what does live performance look like with an audience anymore. And so I'm hopeful that someone out there listening is going to take advantage of that. It's not going to be me. I hope it's one of my students or somebody that is, within earshot, because I just think this is a fantastic. It's perfectly designed for what we do.
And not only in terms of performance, but also in terms of development, in terms of musicians. Chamber music and that kind of thing is the ideal place to develop your musical independence and artistry. And that's the thing, as college teachers we do a lot is trying to work with students that have come from junior high and high school band, and basically they've been obeying for 7 years. They've done everything the band director has told them, and not that there's anything wrong with what they're telling them, but it's not their musical thought, it's not their musical vision. So if we can develop that idea of personal artistry and really starting to get that across, and that's like when we were in Boston Brass together, that was the coolest part, was rehearsing. It's like, well, what do you want to do? Well, let's try this, let's try this, let's try this. How do you want me to play it? Yes.
I was going to do it, and I thought, no, he'll do it.
So there's all these things that I think we have opportunities as teachers to really try to instill, and I know a lot of conductors won't be waving the stick with large ensemble, but it's rather than maybe conducting an ensemble, it can be more of an idea of coaching a chamber ensemble and leading the thought process of the students and trying to engage them in an artistic endeavor which becomes very personal to the musicians involved.
I think we've gotten lazy. We've decided this is authorized. You can have an orchestra, you can have a brass quintet, you can have a string quartet, and that's it. Everything else is just not worth anybody's time. And so now that's all gone. So go, run, Forrest, run.
And a quintet has to be 2 trumpets and a horn and a trombone and a tuba, which totally isn't true. It's never been easier to Sibelius and Finale are both still very hard to use. If you don't think that they are, then you're not a normal user. In terms of beginners, they're hard. They're supposed to be hard to use. They're the most powerful, music notation software in the world. It's like Photoshop is like really complicated because it's literally the most powerful photo editing tool in the world. But there are all of these like note flight, and there are all these ways that like any high school student with no help whatsoever and a little curiosity and like an hour can spit out a duet that will be as bad as JD always says his first arrangements for brass quintet were. He claims he burned them all. Which I would kill to be able to do a whole concert of his horrible early arrangements. That would make me really happy.
That's for sure.
Well, I would want you to be in the front row just to watch your face the whole time. I'd memorize the book just so I could watch you. But that's the thing. Even J.D. Shaw, who, don't tell him I said this, but is one of the best arrangers for brass that I've ever. I mean, he's on like the shortest list possible for tier 1 for me. And when he started, I wasn't with him at the time, he said they were terrible. So everybody's got to start somewhere. But as Lance just said, it's an opportunity for everybody to reevaluate everything. And there's so many assumptions that we all make that sometimes are so ingrained in us, either personally or in the culture of our corner of the world, that we don't even realize that we think that they're facts when they're actually assumptions, which you can just change your mind on those. And there is nothing. I teach a class at Shenandoah called The Entrepreneurial Musician, and I call it entrepreneurial because I'm not trying to turn it's required for every performance major. I'm not trying to change any of them into entrepreneurs. I'm not. Like, if you want to go the route where you're going to get into a military band, I don't try and change them one bit, but even getting into those, you can be entrepreneurial in a way to position yourself more to get a teaching job or to get that kind of thing. The traditional jobs I think are still going to be there. Not all of them. Some of them are already gone. And I think a bunch of orchestras are going to get smaller, and there's probably going to be a lot less full-time tuba positions to be had, and then it's going to be per service, and then those are going to pay really, there are going to be certain weird, corners of the business that shrink a lot, and then there are going to be big parts that shrink a lot. But I think it's an opportunity because most people who are my age or Lance's age or JD's age are not super adaptable. They're just not, right? It's not 95% that aren't adaptable, but it's also not 10% that aren't adaptable. There's a big chunk of people who are in their 40s, 50s, 60s who are not adaptable. If you're young and you are, then this is actually a good thing for you. Not that anybody should be wishing that things crumble, but you understand, not that anyone is. But it's an opportunity, really. And if you're curious, then just go. And you're going to make mistakes, just go.
Well, and the thing is, too, as Lance was saying, we got complacent about what the ensembles are. We've also gotten complacent about, we have everything available to us. Everything, all these things for brass quintet, for orchestra, for band. Now we don't have those things, so here is a time to produce. Rather than consume the music that's out there, we can produce what's next, and that's really what we need to be jumping on. Is all these new ideas. As human beings, we're strong because we adapt, and if we can adapt, not just in terms of what ensemble we play, but what we're playing as well, and we create that also becomes part of what I mentioned before, just that unique personality of who we are. I didn't start writing brass quintet music because I thought I want to write a bunch of brass quintet music. I was in an ensemble that was playing all Canadian brass, Empire brass, and Dallas brass tunes, and they were like, well, we want to tour the world. I was like, well, how can you do that playing somebody else's show? It's like Van Halen going on the road with an AC/DC book. It's not going to work. So it was necessity that if we wanted to work, and so when we were exploring that, it's like, okay, well, what do we want to play? And that was what led the charge, and so it was out of necessity that I started writing. And I think, boy, there's not a more apropos time of necessity than right now.
Well, and what it requires is that you level up your skills. And so you just decide if it's arranging, for example, and you know that you're going to suck at arranging, well, the sooner you get the crappy ones out, the sooner you can start to learn. So crank out 30 arrangements this summer, and I bet you the 30th one's going to be better than the first one. So, and you can swap out what the task or skill that you want to develop. But if your fear of failure is what's stopping you, that's a really crappy way of a crappy reason, because you don't have to show it to anybody. And furthermore, the playback systems on these arranging programs or notation programs are so much more sophisticated. When I'm coming up and JD are coming up, you just had a spiral notebook, and you would I was doing arrangements all the time when I was in the Air Force Band for a brass quintet, a quartet that I was in, and two Euphonium quartet. and it was just sitting there with the pen and like doing it by hand, and then just putting it in front of the band to hear. It took so much longer for me to get the crappy ones out because it took so long to get the first one in front of the players. And now you can have an immediate, oh, the voicing of that is terrible. Why does that sound bad? And you can play it. I mean, just iterate and iterate and iterate. Fail better and fail better and fail better.
Well, I mean, as he was saying, you could get to your 30th one and it's good. By the 30th one, you have some knowledge so that you can go back to those beginning ones. You can rewrite them and resurrect them. So, you know, I have a lot of bad arrangements that I did early in my career, but I've gone back and fixed them. So that they can be something that is a little more palatable, if you will.
Hey, if you want to feel old, speaking of Van Halen, Sammy Hagar is 72. 72.
And now
You guys have the same hair.
I can't drive 35.
Oh.
You know, it's so true. And like thinking about like the beginning of the brass festivals when Austin Boyer and I co-founded the first one, is we had to create everything, like not just like the schedule, the plan, what was it going to look like, but a website and, you know, a sponsor list and everything like that. And then we just kind of were like, do you want to learn how to do that? Okay, you learn how to do that. I'll learn how to do that. And then just starting to like build a lot of these skills. And if I know, Andrew, you said you're not watching any videos that pop up that people create on Facebook, but if you happen to see a Biva premiere, all of the video editing is done by Dakota, who is learning to do it as we're going through.
That's awesome. No, and I guess I should say that I'm not, I am watching some videos when it's like, when I know that somebody has specifically made something. It's just when I'm scrolling through social media, I'm not, well, there was something on Twitter. There was a black female
Everything's on Twitter.
composer. Yeah, Facebook is the people that you went to high school with and you wish you didn't know, and Twitter is all the people that I wish I'd gone to high school with. That's kind of how, and that's not mine, but there's a black female composer, and I think her name is Alice. She's a flute player who wrote four short pieces that she has set for treble clef, like high bass clef and low bass clef. And she's made it free to anybody, and people are putting very different spins on this and are posting videos of this like thing that was just composed last month. Like, that to me is really interesting. And she also is offering anybody that performs one of her pieces, she has like $500. Somebody matched it. She has like $1,000, and if you perform one, then she'll pay you $50. Like, that to me is interesting on a number of levels. That's interesting to me musically, because hearing the same piece performed on a flute versus a viola versus a tuba, different interpretations. The fact that it's new music, like this, you know, that there's a hashtag, you know, that to me, again, just to me, is a lot more interesting than a tuba quartet that just puts out another arrangement of a pretty, you know, chorale kind of thing, because I've just seen so much of that. Yeah, so when I say I'm not clicking on anything, then, and I bet Dakota's really good, I will click on the next one of those that I see. But in general, there's a saturation, right? I mean, there's like a saturation of the market. But I'm also not way into those videos, so if you're making them, you shouldn't worry that I think there are too many, because I'm not your core audience there, right? There are some people who love watching those. Make it for those people, not for me. That's an important point to make.
Well, oh, by the way, it could be a different audience than might have come to your recital or your concert or your marching band show or your whatever. So you might be looking at a brand new market for a thing that you make, which is an incredible opportunity. So take advantage of it.
Oh my God, that was creepy. It's still creepy. I can't tell. Wow. Okay, your frozen face is very good.
Hey, hold on one second, because I want to give her a plug. I just looked it up. It's Alice Jones. Her name on Twitter is Alice H Jones, but that's the person that's been doing the tiny concert thing. So anyway, go ahead. Continue.
I'm going to interrupt you before you interrupt me interrupting you. There's an overarching connective thread here, which is that one of the other opportunities that's come out of the pandemic is that it's disrupted everyone's normal patterns. And so then you have the opportunity to evaluate whether your previous pattern was bringing you any value, whether it was, I get up in the morning and I watch the news for 2 hours. Is that what you did before? Do you need to do that now? or whatever your routine was is out the window. And so we're kind of far into it now, but it's not so far into it that you can't look at your patterns and evaluate whether they're the spiral's going this way or the spiral's going that way.
So all three of you guys played together for a number of years, and you toured all over the world. And so, just as fanboy Dakota here, what was your favorite experience while with Boston Brass?
Can't tell you.
Does it involve
Not
things
safe
that are
for
not
work.
legal?
No,
Yeah,
it's
or maybe just like
favorite
best
experience.
place you went to, or like favorite place to tour, or the time Andy made a fool of himself. It really depends on what you think your best experience was.
Which one?
Never happened. Never happened. I would always just go straight back to the hotel. With the time when we recorded with Steve Gadd was a highlight that all three of us were involved with. We
That was a winner.
were in Arizona recording the Latin Nights album with Sam I Gucci Gucci Palafian as the producer, and Clark Rigsby, Clark with an extra E because he gets to charge more because it sounds British or fancy or something, as the recording engineer. And we were at lunch with Diane Palafian, who was the better half of that marriage. And the eight of us were out at a Thai restaurant in Phoenix, and Clark mentioned that Steve Gadd had moved to Phoenix, which seemed like kind of a weird place for arguably the greatest living drummer in the world to live. And I might have been JD. Somebody said, "Oh, we should get him to record with us," and like as a total joke. And then Clark was like, "Do you want me to call him?" And we all looked. We were like, "Yeah, sure." And he was like, "He's expensive, but I can call him." And we were like, "Yeah, definitely." So he calls him, gets him on the phone immediately, and then he stepped out, comes back like 7 minutes later, and he was like, "Yeah, he'll come for a couple hours for $2,000 or something like that." And we were like, "Yes, done." So we recorded Watermelon Man and Brazil with him in the studio, and he was super cool. Like when he got there, I was grilling him. Like I've been on the receiving end of many times at tuba conferences, and then about 8 minutes in, I realized that I was grilling him, and I literally apologized, and I said, "I'm sorry, I will stop the interview now, and I'll clean it up to keep the Facebook feed nice and PG." But he said, "No, man, you're cool. You're asking me interesting stuff. Keep going." So, and then I was like, "All right." So I just kept on interviewing him. But it was amazing. He listened to us record. He listened to us read the chart, each chart down once, and he was kind of taking a little notes. He was up in the drum, isolation booth, and then he said, "Okay, give me just a few minutes." And then he was just frantically writing notes, and like he barely played at all. And then he just kind of wrote some notes, and then he goes, "Okay, I'm ready." And then and then he started playing, and it was the greatest drummer in the world who had been practicing this thing for a month and a half, and yeah, that was. And then he did the same thing again, and even Palafian was blown away. He was like, "Yeah, that's why they call that guy the hit maker." He was getting to watch him. Sam was starstruck, when Sam's starstruck, that's when it's okay, yeah, this guy's. It was amazing. It was really fun.
Yeah, there was another time when we were recording, and we recorded with the great Rudy Van Gelder, who is responsible for all the Blue Note albums back in the '60s. And so I remember one time we were recording Joy Spring and Clifford Brown tune, and so we're sitting there going along, and Rudy comes over the thing and goes, "Yeah, I think I recorded this one before." And next thing we know, we have some raw edits of Clifford Brown being played in our headphones. He just pulled them out and started playing. So almost every tune that we were playing on this album, he had recorded the original. We did a Horace Silver tune, so he brought up the original takes of that. And I always thought it was interesting too, because the bathroom had no doors on it, because some of the musicians would go in there and do have personality adjustment moments, in substance-wise, and so he had.
You mean they meditated?
Yes, exactly. And so they would have so he took the doors off because all these cats were. But what was cool about that, he was the most. He was probably the most particular recording engineer we ever worked with, and so we were warned before we get in there, don't touch the mic stand, don't touch the mic, don't touch anything. And so we were sitting in there at one point, and our producer, John Laverty from Syracuse University, it was after a take, and he's trying to put into words how he wants us to do something different the next time, and he just starts kind of tapping as he's thinking on his mic as he was talking to us. Well, of course, this tapping starts coming through the entire system, and Rudy just starts freaking out. He's like, "What's going on? Who's touching the mic? Who's putting?" And we're all looking at John, and they have a partition. And you watch John just kind of put his head down and hide because somebody was about to die. But that was a really neat recording to kind of be in that studio with all that history and somebody as storied as Rudy Van Gelder. Pretty neat experience.
We would do 100 concerts a year, and we were out 170 days a year. And there are definitely some concerts that stand out or that are more memorable than others. But I think I'm away from it now long enough that the stuff that I guess miss the most, or that I remember the most fondly, would be recording sessions. I like doing that. I just think it's a really fun mental challenge, and fortunately I've been able to work with these two on some other stuff, the brass recording project, and then the Cones and Tones thing we're hoping to see the light of day before too long, actually. That's coming along, I think. There's just something where everybody's concentrating in a concerted effort, something about that is addictive. And in performance, there's just so much other stuff that's going on, and it's really for the audience, and you're just trying to make sure that you're delivering the thing for the audience. But in recording, it feels more, personal is not the right word, but it really feels like it's the group of us trying to, as hard as we can, to deliver this thing the best that we can. So I miss that stuff. And then the other stuff I missed the most was just sort of brainstorming ideas with JD about programming. And there was, before they'd hired me, but before the first tour, they flew me down. JD was living in Tampa, and so they flew me down, and JD and I floated in the Gulf of Mexico and rewrote the show. Not that, just sort of figured out that, well, what about this, and this is a closer, and this is an opener, what if we moved that, and where should the feature be? And I don't know, I remember I was sunburned. I don't remember how many hours we were out there, and that was when I was still eating, what's that?
All day long, and then we went back to the house and got in the pool and did it some more.
That's right. Yeah, just that, to have the unbelievable gift of getting paid to just let your brain run as far as it can go is a thing that I wish on everybody. And it was, my life is different now than it was, and in many, many ways much better, and in other ways, well, it's not as this, or maybe a little more of that. I'm basically, COVID aside, I'm hardly doing any performing right now, and coming to terms with that is, it's just sort of an interesting kind of aging thing, I guess. But when I look back, it's that the fact that I got to do that and try and be as creative as I could for 7 years is, that's just an enormous gift that I'm grateful for every day.
And the only limitation that we had was, will the audience like it or hate it?
Yeah.
And that was it. And it really was just trying to bring the audience on a journey. And I'm really proud of the fact that I think we did that. And that when people left our concerts, they were excited and they were inspired, and they'd had a good time. It was just a great opportunity for some of them to get away, and that we could facilitate that was truly a blessing.
Yeah, totally. And when people are asking me sometimes about like favorite cities or favorite tours and concerts and stuff, and it's like, well, what about it actually makes it your favorite? Do you think it's like that had the largest attendance? Do you think it's that the crowd was like the most wild. They were so excited that the band was really great, that the town was really cool. So like there's a lot of factors that make, like a really good concert and maybe like a favorite. So I don't know, you guys have done so many over the years. We kind of had talked about the first years of the festivals, and we talked about your first time at the festivals and everything like that, of the good, the bad, and the ugly. But do you guys have any memories from like one of your first concerts or your first years in Boston Brass? Because JD, you were in it the earliest, I think, out of this group, right? And then Andrew, and then Lance.
Yeah, when I got into the group, it was basically a wedding group. They did a lot of weddings and services like that. They wanted to do more, but that's kind of what they were doing to pay the bills. And man, I'll tell you what, I learned to hate to play weddings. And there was always something that was gonna go wrong.
And there's so much happiness.
Yeah, I keep telling my daughter, yeah, you want to elope? Cool, man. I'm with you. But one of the things is, yeah, there was bad things, but they always managed to turn into something good. Like, I remember a lot of people would always say, well, what was cool about watching Boston Brass is we would do our whole show from memory. So there wasn't stands there wasn't anything, it was just us out there. And a lot of people say, wow, it's really neat that you did that because there's not the separation between you and the audience. Well, in reality, why it really happened is when we were touring and when we started doing like allied concert tours, we would be in the middle of Montana, and we would show, and they really wouldn't read your contract writer, but we would show up at a place like it was like the all-purpose room of a middle school. And for stands, there might be 2 wire stands, and then you're lucky if you had light that was actually illuminating those stands. And so it just got to a place where Rich Kelly, our lead trumpet at the time, he was just like, well, guys, we played this show so many times, we can kind of just do it from memory anyway. So why don't we just do that, and then we don't have to worry about all this other stuff. So I just remember some of those early concerts. It was amazing what some of those situations that we played concerts in. But we were the hired help. We had to do it, and I think we did. And so a lot of those bad things you can turn into good things.
I think probably my 2 favorite concerts, one was from early-ish, and one was from towards the end. One was with in Singapore. We did music of Romeo and Juliet with the Tang String Quartet, and combined forces in the Esplanade, and it was just kind of they had staged it beautifully and lit it beautifully, and the charts worked great, and JD had done the Prokofiev for Romeo and Juliet, which did in the first half, and then we did West Side Story in the second half with combined forces and a couple of other special things thrown in. It was just a real highlight of my career to me. And then the other one, just because it was just a party. We did a Kenton Christmas Carol at Midwest one year, and it was just like anytime you play for a music educator crowd or a crowd that's educated about music making, it's just so much more fun. Than the jokes hit harder, and they appreciate the music making, and it was just crazy. Just the lineup it's all these killer players who are all just complete dingbats, and you just like put this like circus parade on stage, and it was just electric for 2 hours, and and then like people were just stopping you for days talking about that gig. So that stuff's fun. But I've had probably just as many memories of just Ada, Oklahoma, or Rugby, North Dakota, where it was just like we were all in in a less than ideal situation, and it was time to go. And so we just all played and tried as hard as we could in Rugby as we did at Midwest. And that said something about that group.
I think the good thing about it too is you're hanging on stage with your best friends, and then all the hangs outside of that as well. I mean, and a lot of it is centered around food. So some of the play you want to learn about people in a different country, look at what they eat, and so going to Singapore and China and Spain and all those kind of places, and just hanging with these guys over a meal was the best part of it.
Yeah, it's hard to actually pick a few. There was so many. I mean, over 14 years. There's just so many. That concert with the Tank Quartet was very special for me as well. I had been friends with those guys. They used to teach at Tanglewood each summer, and so I hung with them I had been very good friends with them for years, and to get to actually collaborate with them was really special. I loved the tours of Japan that we did. I have a very, very I have a special relationship with Japan. Yeah, it's a really special place, and I do appreciate getting to have traveled the world for sure. And my first concert with Boston Brass, I guess, is probably my most memorable, because I'd never met them, and I was just an emergency sub and flew up, and yeah, it was fun. So yeah, it was a lot of good times.
My first concert was at the Elkhart Jazz Festival. It was the first time I had played the trombone publicly.
Should we tell that story? Lance?
Sure, yeah. That was kind of crazy. So it was 6 months into my trombone playing career. I was playing on stage at a jazz festival with a trombone in hand, just saying, "Don't drop the slide. Just don't drop the slide."
Well, we knew there was going to be a trombone opening, and we were playing in Pittsburgh, and so Lance and I had met a number of years before, and so we're sitting out. Wasn't it like some salsa bar or something in Pittsburgh?
I think it was an Italian place.
We were in a restaurant.
Yeah.
Okay, so we were talking about we're going to have a trombone opening, and he's like, "Man, I wish you guys would take a euphonium," and I said, "Man, I wish you played trombone," and he goes, "Well, how hard can it be? Trombone players do it," and so he just kind of started practicing, and came in and auditioned, and he was
serviceable
on trombone, yeah, serviceable. But he also brought a lot to the band as well, so it's just amazing that he learned to play trombone that quickly, and then just was an integral member right off the bat. So it was pretty neat to see somebody just say, "Well, okay, I'm going to go do that," and he did.
We're getting near the end of our time, but we have a couple of Facebook questions if you guys can hang around for those.
I don't know that much about Facebook. I mean, I can try and help you, but...
Ooh, got a storm here. Okay, so from Madison Ray, in your early stages of a brass quintet, how did you make yourself relevant and stand out from other brass quintets that were performing?
For us, really what it was is that we started doing a lot of more mainstream jazz. The first half would be a lot of classical stuff, and then the second half was, Canadian made their fame kind of doing Dixieland and that kind of stuff, and early blues and stuff. But we're like, well, let's see if we can do some more hard driving type stuff. So we started looking at like some Bill Holman tunes, some Stan Kenton charts, Buddy Rich, Horace Silver. We started getting into some of that kind of stuff, and then got into a lot of Latin stuff as well when Jose joined the band. And so that really kind of it challenged me as a writer, because I was having to write all this stuff, and so it was. I think that's really how we established ourselves as different from the other groups.
The key is you have to make whatever you're doing, if you want traction, whether that's impact or income, and income always follows impact, you have to make yourself remarkable, and that means worth remarking about. And Boston Brass, because I know the people that were in when JD joined, were an amazing brass group, but they were not doing anything that was super remarkable, because they were playing other people's music, and they were just playing it really well. I bet they were playing some of that music better than the people who had written it, right? But that's not remarkable. That's not worth remarking about. If they had stopped playing that music better than the people who had written it, the world would not have missed it at all. It just would have gone quietly in the night. So you've got to do something that is worth remarking about, and that's why you can't just do what everyone else has done before you. Even if you do it a little better, that's not going to get it done. So there.
All right, we've got one more question from our lovely trombone faculty, Dr. Kenny J. He said each one of you played really personal and interesting recitals at our festivals. And so he's wondering, what is the process that you come up with recitals and learning them? Or, do you typically keep a recital up all year? Or do you learn a new one for each performance? What's your process?
I'll go first. My process is like, do I like it? And if I like it, then I play it. And if I don't, then I don't. Lance actually put words to something I'd been feeling for a long time and had never quite put my finger on. But playing really, really difficult tuba solo literature that I don't really like all that much, just taking the time to do it, just to say that I can do it, even to myself or others. Like, as Lance put it, he said, I don't really have anything to offer to that conversation. And I agree. Not that my version wouldn't be different. I'm not saying that there's no point in me playing that and putting my version out into the world, but I'm just not spending a month learning the last movement of the John Williams tuba concerto, which, like, I'm a John Williams super fan, and I don't like that concerto. It just doesn't do that much for it. If Rex Martin was performing it, I'd go to any concert because I haven't been to one in a long time. But in normal circumstances, sure, I'd drive a couple hours to see him play anything. But I don't really need to hear that piece ever again. So I'm not taking a month to learn that to then go and play it at Fred Brass. So, and I also like to make sure that I'm not only playing music of dead people who look like me, which also your mileage may vary, but that's been important to me for a long time. And so I kind of try and mix it up there as well.
I like the old, there's a saying for weddings, which is the bride should have something old, something new, something borrowed, and something blue. And that's kind of an age-old recipe that I like to use. So some old piece, and that I just leave it as general as that. But it's what Andrew said. Like, I don't do enough of it so that I don't do it that much. So when I do it, I sure don't want to play anything that I'm not really, really, really into. So an old piece, a new piece, a transcription is how I read that, and then something blue. I usually try and I love Tom Waits, so I might play a Tom Waits tune, or we've got a buddy, Doc Nickens, I might play his blues in F, or just something that is different. I also like to build on what Andrew said. My goal is to have everybody go, I never heard any of these pieces before. Like, what are these euphonium? Like, what are these tunes? I don't know what these tunes are. And then I feel like, okay, good. Because there's, especially now, when we do a search, you could find 5,000 versions of any standard repertoire. Great. But where's the stuff that nobody knows and they should know? Like Philip Glass wrote this beautiful cello piece called Orbit for solo cello. And it's incredibly playable for euphoniums, tubas, well, any solo brass instrument. There's a little bit of double stops in there that you have to deal with, but it's just a gorgeous piece by a major composer that was written in the last 20, 30 years. And why not us? I mean, especially euphonium. You're like, here's your euphonium, start stealing music. So that's kind of like, that's been our instruction from day one. So that answers it, but that's, get off my yard.
I think for me is I'm really interested in the journey through the recital, and I think that was something with Boston Brass too. Is we tried to have a journey through time, so that this piece motivates this piece, which motivates this piece. So I kind of like to think of it in a narrative quality. Ultimately, I gotta want to play the pieces that I want to play. I want to play things that you might not have ever heard on horn before, but yeah, it mainly just comes down to what's the path that I would like the audience to go on, and that's real important to me. Just that the narrative throughout time is something that's engaging and interesting, as well as just being interesting for me to work on.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much for your insight all day and all the great stories. Really quick plug. I'm probably going to be terrible at this. So Lance, Andy, if you want to hop in. Brass Junkie's having a bonus day today. If you want to talk about that really quick.
Sure. Lance would love to.
Hang on. I was changing my name to Insight All Day. So a couple of weeks ago, we did the Brass Junkies Academy.
Duddy Deshler.
Yeah, I had Ambrose for a while.
Duddy. Oh, Duddy. I love it.
Daddy,
that's
Daddy,
good.
I want some more, Daddy. So we had 15 fantastic artists. We added a bonus day. It's today. It's not too late to sign up. Go to brassjunkies.academy, and at 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, we're interviewing Rex by God Richardson. I swear to God, I'm not drunk. This is so fun. I'm really glad I had this done before I had to be on Zoom calls for 5 hours the day before. Anyway, Rex Richardson.
You might as well be working in a coal mine, man. That's a rough day.
Duddy Deshler wants me to let you know that Rex Richardson, and actually I switched the R's in his name, but you just don't know. He's at 5. And then Chris Castellanos, again, did it. He's at 6:30, and then we have a very special hang with an unannounced guest at 8 because we don't know who that guest is. So go to brassjunkies.academy.
The guest might be you.
It might be you. And so you get, for $59, you get the 2 live interviews, the hang, and then access to all 20 hours of the previous stuff. Thank you for the opportunity to plug.
Yeah. Is that Rex Richardson, the trumpet player, or Rex Richardson, the Tennessee real estate agent?
I appreciate you asking that question. Can't do it. I'm going to split my lip.
Well, yeah, once again, that's www.brassjunkies.academy. Andy, you want to hop in here?
No, we also, I can't remember. I'm old, so I might have mentioned this already at the beginning of the hour, but we launched a YouTube channel like today for the Brass Junkies, which I think I said out loud. I know I thought, but I'm getting nods. So, but yeah, and it turns out you don't get a customizable URL until you have 100 subscribers and you've been around for 30 days. And we've already got like 15 subscribers, but yeah, so it's youtube.com/338. So, but it will be something cooler if you go and subscribe. So we're going to put them all up on video now.
And tell them we have a YouTube channel.
We also, we're actually launching today. We have a YouTube channel for the Brass Junkies where we're going to put it up there. So we have about 15 subscribers.
Yeah.
But we need 100 to get a URL. Thank you, Sam.
Before we do go, there's been a little bit of a tradition that's started on here. We're asking everybody to sign off with their heartiest mouth trumpet noise. And since we only have,
I want to see Lance's. I want to see Lance's lip just explode.
We're gonna have to
blood.
see a medical waiver or something for that.
I'll give you a trumpet player noise as my signed off.
We could take that. We can absolutely take that.
Are you ready?
Signed off.
Oh, do you want Sam's example first? Because his is pretty good.
Oh, okay, go ahead.
Sure. I'm not as great as our resident trumpet player, but we'll try our best. So each of our mouth trumpets will be a little.
I could do one of those, but it won't be with my mouth.
I'll go with a.
What is happening?
Not sure which
Oh,
mouthpiece
boo.
I should use. I'll use.
Do you guys remember this call before it was super awkward? I do. Like,
And that is
I'm
the
going
point.
last.
Good.
I'm better than you.
Also accepted.
All right, Lance.
You guys suck.
That is a trumpet player one. Yeah.
I'm reminded.
I really like what you tried to do there. Would be another one.
Yep. This reminds me of a time early in my time when I was just hoping that Lance's lip bled. That we were on our way to a gig at Mesa State College in Colorado, which has since rebranded. But our former trombone player was in the van on the way, going. He was making he was making, 6-year-old sounds, and we were all like doing it and laughing. He was just really into it for some reason, and he did it so hard that he made his nose bleed. And and because of the altitude, blood was pouring out of his nose while he was just laughing hysterically, and he's covered it. Yeah. So, professional brass quintet. We were like on our way to a gig, and he's just covered in blood in his hand. I mean, yeah, good times.
About Wichita when we were backstage, and the presenter came into the dressing room and made that sound.
He made a mouth trumpet. But not with his mouth.
His lips did not move.
And it was in the middle of a sentence, and he just he kept talking like nobody heard, and we all just froze, and then he wrapped up, and then he left, and then we waited for a second, and then I was crying.
Swalwell.
Oh, yeah.
My tears were streaming down my face. So, anyway, yeah.
Oh, man.
Well, all right. On behalf of everyone here at BIVA, thanks to Lance, Andy, and JD for coming out and chatting with us today. And thanks for everybody on the internet for hanging in there for as long as you could. Woo! Once again, a huge thank you to JD Shaw, Andrew Hitz, and Lance LaDuke for joining us today on episode 12 of BIVA Broadcasts to discuss their time in Boston Brass and how they're keeping motivated during this unprecedented time. If you would like your product or school to be featured on our broadcast, please reach out to Dakota Corbliss, Director of Operations at dakota@fredbrass.com. Thank you all for listening. See you next time.